What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Avid Cat Studios. I'm your host, Sir Stormchild, and this is Avid Cat. I've changed formats yet again. Basically, I bought Carl actual editing software, so he doesn't have to try to figure out how to do everything in OBS. But anyway, we're going to talk about uh, a book that I've had in my brain ever since I was 13. It's about a 13-year-old girl named Christina. Calling Fog, Snow, and Fire. Originally titled Losing Christina, which is what you'll see on the this picture that I made up. It's by Caroline B. Cooney. She has written over 90 novels. It's insane. Most of them are young adult novels, but that's fine. They everybody has a place in this world. Trust me. But she wrote in 1990. It says the best-selling author of Face on the Milk Carton, which I've never read. I guess most of her stuff tends to lean towards horror and psychological horror, which is what this is. It's basically how to gaslight a teenager until they almost go insane. Well, Carl, just showing the picture so we can get this ball on the roll, huh? So there's a lot of stuff going on. It is 3 whole books, but these are your main characters, and if Carl does his job right, this will be more entertaining. Not that I don't love you, Carl. You know I do, just like everybody else out there, whether I say it or not. Okay, so what are your settings? Maine is your setting. Maine, USA. It starts off on Burning Fog Island. You go into the mainland, which is Candle Cove. All the kids stay at the Schooner Inn, and it's junior high school, to where it's half of it is junior high and half of it is actually high school, like my actual high school. They were just basically 2 wings of each other, but this school is a lot bigger. I did flip through it to try to figure out what it is. It's probably just Candle Cove High School and junior high school, just kind of combined. So if you really need a name for that, I basically wrote down everything in here that is pertinent to what's going on, but not overly explaining it. Because, I mean, look at this. This is 442 pages. It is 3 books. Let's get through the main cast of characters. You have Christina Romney, who is 13 years old, and she has tri-colored hair. There's natural. It's like chocolate, and it's also got silver and gold, kind of interweaving together, 3 kinds. And at some points, it looks like snakes, depending on what the story needs to do. You have the second oldest character, Anya Rothrock, as the main people's. The Anya Rothrock, she's 17, black hair. That's what I put on these things. They're just what you can remember of them without having to pay attention to their entire life story. Dolly J, who doesn't really show up to the end of the first book and throughout the second book, but she's about 11 and she has red hair and she's annoying. Benjamin, who mostly goes by Benj, he's about 15 years old. He doesn't really pay attention in school, and all he wants to do is become a lobster man. That's just his thing. He just wants to be a lobster man. He doesn't care. He's like, once I turn 16, I'm gonna get me a boat and me a lobster man. And I guess that's fine, because it is 1990 Maine, and I mean, shrimping's a legit business. Lobster is a legit business, and they're delicious. I mean, Maine lobster, it's fine. You have Blake Latham, who is Anya's boyfriend. He's 18 years old, and all I can really remember about him is he's catalog Maine. I know what that means. I mean, he wears basically what you would see some rich kid wearing at a yacht club, dock shoes with, no socks, and possibly having a sweater tied around his neck and it's fucking summer, one of those dudes. But he's legit actually a nice dude. He tries throughout the series to protect his girlfriend, and he knows something's weird about the Shevingtons, but he can't figure it out. And then you got Jonah Bergeron. He's 13 years old, and he's basically this jerk kid at the beginning of the book, who I think it's told might be Shevington. It's not. It doesn't say it. But I think he gets told to basically latch on to Christina, or maybe he does it on his own. It's entirely possible. Sometimes, especially as a dude, you're kind of a jerk to a girl and you're like, I hope she likes me. Like, why? You're an asshole. Possibly. That's how this world works. And then you have your two main bad characters. There's a third one, Miss Frisch. She's the souvenir lady. I don't even know if I spelled souvenir right. Probably not. I think there's another one. Whatever. She might be related to them because she looks exactly like Miss Shevington. It's Arnold Shevington, who is the principal, well-dressed, and his eyes change usually from blue to gray. And I think it's like contacts, but that's never confirmed. And Candy Shevington, which is Miss Shevington, she's an English teacher. She has an oatmeal face. Don't know what that means. Probably a lot of gross stuff all over it. And she has no side profile. Like when she turns, she just is like a mass of a person, and she has like, what they say, like corn kind of teeth and thick fingernails that are always painted blood red. At 5:30 in the morning, the rising sun touched the coast of Maine, passed through a window high in Schooner Inn, and rested on a pillow. Strange hair lay on the pillow, silver and gold laced with chocolate brown. The hair seemed to burn in the sunlight, its three colors melting as if on fire. In the doorway of the bedroom, someone smiled at the sleeping girl. The smile exposed stubby yellow teeth and a face as flat as paper. Above the smile, eyes glowed like phosphorescent mold. Fingers whose bitten nails were painted blood red lit a match. The match rasped across the striking surface like a knife being sharpened. Those are two different sounds. The yellow smile curled across a complexion like pie dough, and the visitor slid away down creaking stairs behind thick green doors. And like basically where the horror element comes into it is it's psychological horror. They technically don't do anything directly. They kind of like manipulate you into doing the thing. Like there are okay, we'll just get into the main plot because this will explain that. I have them broken up in three categories: fog, snow, fire, which are the three books originally. Losing Christina, snow, Losing Christina, fire, I think. To explain what basically happens in them is the fog is like blurring her identity, and the snow is burying her identity, and the third one is burning identities. And so we start off. They're on the island. They're just walking around, and Carl, fog. Do that. I don't fucking know how you do that. So they're walking around their own island, Burning Fog Island, which has this weird thing of when the sun hits it just right, all the fog glows and it looks like it's on fire. So Burning Fog Island, and there's a whole lot of stuff around that. Well, not like a whole lot of stuff. Like certain parts in the stories, it's like, oh my god, it's on fire, and like Anya's about to fall out of a window, and she's like, no, it's you live there. Like, what are you doing? That'll come into play. So we meet the gross souvenir lady, also maybe known as Miss Frisch. She's on the souvenir thing. She hands her a unwanted poster. She's like, you want this poster? I'm like, no, I want one like, something that's pretty, it's like maybe some flowers or something. Like, no, you need this one. And it's this picture of like a sea crashing, and like Anya says, it's the fingers of the sea. They're trying to get us. Well, she says that once they get on the island. And it's like, well, she says it before that. Anyway, they go to the fucking island. They go to the mainland. And the heavy fog starts to roll in. So now the ambiance is being set for everything. We meet Mrs. Shevington right on the boat, right on the dock. They start heading towards the schooner inn. And that's when we meet Mr. Shevington, I think. But before that, I have a note that just says Muddy Wetsuit Man. when they're walking to it, before they get to Breakneck Hill, which is at the top of this huge, large hill. I really should have drawn this, but basically it goes up like this, and then it does this, and then there's a fucking cliff at the end. At the edge of like the cliff and everything else, like that's where the inn is set, and there's like kind of a weird basement, like caves underneath it. So like every time like the waves crash in, like the tide rises 28 feet, it like crashes up against the side, and like the whole like building shakes or whatever. But when it like recedes, there's this muddy wetland kind of thing that you can see at the bottom, and there's some weird person in a wetsuit just waving at him, and you can kind of hear him giggling. That comes into play later. So they get there. It's this huge, like, one kind of like a big rectangle building in my head anyway, that kind of just goes up. Ground floor is where they have the kitchen and maybe an office thing, and then like the basement and all that. Then you get to the second floor is where everybody else would stay if they had guests, which they do not. There's like 8 guest bedrooms and like their room, which why would there be 9 rooms, but whatever. And they're all decorated completely different from each other, and nobody ever stays there. Why? We'll get to that. Listen to the fingers, whispered Anya. It's not a wave, not hello. Come here, say the fingers. Come down here and drown with me. Out in the Atlantic, the waiting ocean chuckled and hissed. The wetsuit raised the other arm as if to embrace them. Christina was already suffocating in the embrace of her own fear and loneliness. She wanted to be hugged. The wetsuit would hug her. She listened to the fingers, like Anya. Come here, said the fingers. Come here and drown with me. They're boarding at the place because Christina is going into the 7th grade. And their high school starts at 7th grade, just like mine. But on the island, there is no high school. So she has to go to the mainland in order to become further educated. And Mr. and Mrs. Shevington, they offer, hey, you can stay here with us. No problem. They do pay them. And Mr. Shevington is also the principal of the high school. Remember, these are the 2 evil ones. Things aren't going to go so well. So she goes to junior high. She's like, oh my God, all I want is friends. And then she gets handed, I forgot to write it down. She gets handed this like questionnaire, like, what are your fears? Like what are your fears? What is name, kind of like boring stuff. And then what are your fears? And she refuses to answer them, but she kind of does, because she fears being alone. She fears of like losing everything around her and just being like separate from people. She likes people. She hates Mr. and Mrs. Shevington, but that's for very obvious reasons. So Anya starts to slowly go nuts. Anya, the brilliant scholar, the one who could recite Shakespeare and do wild poetry and everything else, she starts shutting down. Like, the poster starts to change in their room. Oh, I forgot, because my brain scatter. You know this. On the 3rd floor, that's where they all sleep. They sleep up on the 3rd floor above all the rooms. And there's no carpet. There's this rickety ass fucking staircase that goes up, and there's like no like wallpaper or anything. It's just beds and a floor. And that's where they hang the girls are like rooming together. And then Anya starts to go nuts. The poster starts to change from being calm to raging to like other things. I think it says it changes twice or something like that. Well, back and forth. And at one point, Blake rips it up and tears it up. And I think it gets put up on the wall again. Because Anya starts freaking out about that more. She starts like slowly dissolving. You don't know why. Because essentially, from what I understand, is all the psychological pressure that the Shevingtons are putting on Anya, where she's like, oh, she can be able to handle this, no problem. And then she just fucking shuts down to where she's becomes, at the very end, like a shell of herself. And the Shevingtons love it. Don't quite know why. Tide shakes the inn. Christina's trying to tell everybody, even her parents, like, what the fuck is actually going on, and nobody gives a shit because Mr. Shevington's so nice. So is Miss Shevington. Yes, she looks disgusting, but you can't fight love, goddammit. Ready? They chorused, although none of them were. They hated spontaneous writing. Mrs. Shevington had scheduled it every Friday until kids started getting sick on Fridays just to miss it. Now she would spring the essay anytime. The topics were chosen to upset Christina. She could tell by the smirk on Miss Shevington's face. The 4th week in September, the morning after Blake, Mrs. Shevington had said, smiling at Christina, 2-page essay. How will it feel to die? The whole class looked at Christina. Had not Mrs. Shevington foretold that would happen? Had not their respected teacher told them how Christina was descended from murderers? And then Blake is almost killed because he tries to save Anya, and in the process of like running off this wetsuit guy, because Anya keeps like going towards the sea and wants to give herself to the sea and wed to the sea and all this shit. And then Blake is almost killed. He's almost drowned, and they blame Christina because she was at the ladder where he climbed down, and he's like, I'm going down to try to see who this crazy dude is. And then the tide rushes up and then catches him. He's luckily saved by just a random fisherman. We never learn the name. And then Miss Frisch comes in afterwards because they believe that Christina is the one who pushed them over the edge. And they're gaslighting the fuck out of these kids. Mostly the girls. They seem to really enjoy breaking down the girls instead of like the guys, because they just do whatever, but they do change personalities, which I think they're all exerting pressures, but like I guess because it's like mainly through Christina that you see this stuff, that it doesn't matter as much to them, certain things, and they just kind of take it on and brute force it, I guess. And then there's another character called Miss Schuiler. I don't know how to pronounce that. Maybe it's Jewish. I have no idea. She almost believes her because she's like, there's something off with Mr. Shevington. He's creepy. He's nice, and there's something sinister behind those eyes. You know, if like I was thinking that Tom Hiddleston, if they ever made a movie of this, I don't know why they would. Maybe a miniseries. That would actually be really good. Like a 9-part miniseries. Part 1, 2, and 3 would be Fog and that whatever. This would like easily tie together because it takes place over like a school year, and that could be just one season of it. And then they'd write a second season. It'd be fucking terrible. Which I don't even know if like Miss Cooney is even alive. I hope she is. She's like 75 or something now. Anyway, what was I talking about? Shoes? Close. Schuler. She almost believes them. But she needs proof, as you would, and she's another teacher, but she like kind of protects her. And then Anya almost gives into the sea, like she almost throws herself out the window at one point, and then they blame Christina, and then she's like, no, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't try to push her out the window. I was trying to pull her back in. She just wanted to dive out there. And a lot of these kind of events happen. And then at the very end, there's this huge rainstorm coming down, and she sees Anya leaving, and she's like, wait, don't, where are you going? And she gets stuck at like, you know, the top, I think they call it the cupola, which is like, in my head, it's like the big top thing that you sit in to look out across the ocean. Like, and where that comes from in my head is the movie Casper. Where you could like sit up and watch outside or whatever. I don't really know. I didn't actually look that part up. There's a lot of weird main anachronisms in this. Like, don't be yawning now, Christina. We know you like to yawn, which means lie or tell stories, I guess. Anyway, kind of pointless. So she chases after Anya. I mean, she's like jumping in like off this like 3-story building, landing on the ground. She's hauling ass trying to get to her friends, slipping across like the I think the singing bridge it is. She gets to the edge of the cliff and then talks to Anya, who's like, "Oh, I've waited for you. Where have you been? I've like you said we would go together or whatever." And she's like, "No, stop doing this. It's the Shevingtons. Stop it. Stop it." And then, talks her into like kind of leaving, just like, like basically dragging her away from the fucking ocean. And then they blame Christina for that too. And then to even up the ante for the next one, little Dolly gets transferred to the mainland. She's only in 6th grade, but Mr. Shevington rigs it to where it's like, hey, she can come over and play, essentially. Because Christina, I think you need a friend. She has kind of friends, well, except for Fat Ugly Katie, which I don't know why she keeps calling her that. Like, it's several times she just hates Katie, and then later on, like, Katie's cool, and you're like, why were you calling her Fat Ugly Katie this whole fucking time? It's super weird, but that's essentially what happens in Fog. There's a lot more, but I'm not going into like all those details because a lot of it's like kind of psychologically breaking it down. Again, hopefully I've like added certain things in here. Christina repeated, "Blake?" Anya's joyous laugh rang like church bells. "Blake answered my letters. His boarding school is only a few miles away from the ski resort we're going to. He's meeting me." Christina gasped. "Blake? An ally? Right there?" Blake had known more about the Shevingtons than anybody, and Blake had believed. "Anya, you didn't tell the Shevingtons about this, did you?" "They don't know, do they?" "Tell the Shevingtons?" said Anya. "What do you think I am, crazy?" They both laughed, gales of sane, girlish laughter. At last, they knew something the Shevingtons didn't. So we're moving on to Snow, or as you could also call it, like burying the identity. She's like kind of come up. She's still protecting Anya because Anya's basically like a whiff of her former self. She used to like dress all nice and proper, and now it's just like, I put clothes on, I work at laundromat, stare at water. Look how contained it is. That's kind of what she's turned into, and it's really fucking creepy. Then it gets even creepier she starts hearing giggles in the dark. Most of the time, she could just hear the sea whispering to her, because that's a normal, rational thought. And she hears these giggles in the dark. That's the way it sounds in my head. Hopefully I might pick up on that. And then she goes to investigate it with Anya. Anya fucking leaves, and then she's trapped in the basement, locked in there, and she's pounding away. And then eventually, like, the kids show up, and they're like, "What are you doing in the basement?" Like, "The door's locked." I'm like, "Door wasn't locked," or whatever. She falls asleep because she's just trapped in there in the basement with a little tiny ass little flashlight, and there's one little bulb down there, and like there's a furnace, and like the water can like come up into the basement, and it's really fucking creepy, and it's getting a lot colder. And then she goes to school and starts to kind of fall in love with Jonah, which I mentioned, like he starts to kind of get to her in near the end of the first book. But now she's like kind of like she locks onto him, and she's like, oh, she starts actually listening to what he has to say. Even though Jonah's kind of a fucking idiot, and he's actually kind of an asshole. But I guess he doesn't. I mean, they're like 13, so all 13-year-olds are assholes. I know, I've seen like 2 of you. And so they go to like English class. And in English class, she makes them write down their January daydreams, like what you think about on January. So Christina writes this little short thing about like she wishes she could like set all of her clothes on fire because like they don't matter to her because like that's not who she is. She's not like about material possessions and that kind of whatnot. Um, that comes in a bit later. Then she goes ice skating with Dolly, who doesn't really want to ice skate. She just wants to curl up and start and keep reading. She's like, I got many books for me. And Dolly, like that part of Dolly is like actually not that annoying, but she's like, because she was the youngest one, she's just been fed over and over and over, like she can do no wrong kind of bullshit. They head out to the pond, which the pond wasn't frozen enough, so all the ice skating takes place on a parking lot that they flooded behind like a CVS or something. But they go to the pond. Her and Dolly start making, snow angels, and then something kind of freaky happens, and I think it's like this like kind of a weird storm like blows through or some shit like that. I'm not rereading it again. And they turn around to like go leave, and all the angels are headless. So it's like a non-point to it, but maybe the Shevingtons have a little manipulation over storms and all that, which, hi, look, Storm Child, get it? Partially from this book, actually, weirdly enough. So it says Dolly stops reading, but Dolly doesn't want to stop reading. The Shevingtons say, oh, your head is too much into those fictional books. You need to go out into the real world. I think I said dance class, but like dance class, like that's when like everybody anyway, she stops reading. They force her to do all these other things. Nobody in school really likes her. She's constantly getting bullied. But she doesn't want to say anything because around the Shevingtons, she's like happy and she loves the Shevingtons. She doesn't see the evil in them. But Christina does, and she notices a briefcase that Mr. Shevington always carries around. It's leather, but it's kind of bulging out on the sides a little bit, but it's like soft and supple, like he takes really good care of it. So she kind of locks onto that. She's like, what's in that briefcase? And when she does catch him alone later, for something in class probably, she sees him like putting a file into the briefcase, but never gets into the briefcase. Again, comes back later. Also, there's a few things about the empty rooms. Like, I think she walks around them. She does that more in Fire than she does in Snow, but it does happen in both because they're all one timeline. She walks around the empty rooms, seeing that like 8 is kind of like what Anya used to be. Like a lot of the color palettes and everything. Like, and then she goes to the 7. And that has its own weird kind of color palette to it. And maybe that's another girl. And maybe the other 7 are other children. But she has no like proof on that right now. Yes, it says breaking into school. But like breaking into school should be the briefcase. But like that's her stealing the briefcase. I don't know why I wrote that one weird. But she tries to steal the briefcase. She breaks into the school. Wedges like one of the windows in the girls' bathroom open or whatever. She sneaks out. She loses her mittens in the snowstorm. None of that comes back. Don't worry about it. Gets into the school, gets to like grabbing the briefcase, and then she hears the giggles again. And then she takes off running. She falls, she loses the briefcase in the snow, and then books it back to the house. Briefcase obviously was returned. And all the other girls, mainly Gretch and Vicky and Gretchen. I hate these two bitches. They suck. They're going to have a party, like a nice little house party. And they start talking about like, oh, well, Christina, you couldn't have like a party back at your old house. Because like, you don't even own the house or whatever. Like she lives in like technically a mansion, but like her parents just like take care of the mansion. That's really all it is. It's like, it's not ours. We just kind of live there and like for the summer or whatever. And we just keep up on the place. So it's super cool that way. And Anya's also really poor and so are the boys. And anyway, where the fuck was I? House party, right? Nothing like the movie. It's basically a slumber party that Miss Shevington forces Christina into doing, and she forces her to invite Vicky and Gretchen and Fat Ugly Katie and everybody else, and that goes extremely well because they decide to, play like hide and seek in the fucking dark, and then she ends up locked in the basement again. Well, she was not trying to fall into the basement, but like in the darkness, she's trying to get around. I think Katie ends up being her partner, and then like she leans on a wall, or she thought was a wall, but the door opens, and then she falls into the basement again. And everybody makes fun of her, of course. She goes to school, and all that happens. Gets back home, and like the Shevingtons got home before her, which is really rare. And she also sees like this big smoke coming up from the background. And you're like, what is that about? They set all of her clothes on fire. They took all of her clothes, put it in a pile, lit it on fire like her daydream. You're like, ooh, Christina, you shouldn't play with fire. You shouldn't have lit this bonfire. You said you were going to do it. Oh, we should have listened. And Christina's like, why the fuck would I set all my clothes on fire? This makes no sense, man. This is stupid. But no one believes her. Why would they? So they go to dance class. Everybody kind of goes to dance class. Christina wants to go because Dolly doesn't want to go. Dolly doesn't want to deal with this crap. She hates all of it. And like, why do I need to learn to dance? I just want to sit down in a corner and read. That's all I want to do. Same. So that happens. And then she tries to steal a briefcase again after Gretchen was actually belittled in class for like her kind of like, I don't know if it was someone else. Like Mrs. Shevington comes up with these like immediate essays. Like you have to write them down right now. And whatever you have to say, and like she'll pick on random people to do it. And she does it like constantly. But this was one that like they made fun of her for liking to be. She's probably going to become a hairdresser or something, where she just likes being in the hairdress. Likes being there. And then they make fun of her for that, and she doesn't know what to do because she's always making fun of people, but she's never been made fun of. So when Christina tries to steal the briefcase again, which she does, and Mr. Shevington's chasing her around the high school, she runs into Gretchen. She gives her the briefcase. He's like, okay, hide this somewhere. I'm going to book it out of here. We'll meet up some other place. So they meet up at that other place, and she's like, don't worry about that briefcase. I put it back for you. He'll never know it was gone. It's like, bitch, that's all the evidence to like maybe possibly like get them arrested or anything to happen for these fucking people. And you just put it back. And Mr. Shevington's walking around with like the supervisors and all these other like important people. So he has to keep up a straight face. But this is like the first time you really get like a crack into like the more sinister flow of him. I mean, you have more and more, but like more public kind of thing. So they decide, let's go on a ski trip. Dolly needs to go on a ski trip. Okay, because Dolly's fear of like one is like falling for some reason, and she doesn't want to like die on a ski lift or a ski trip. Why would you? Like skiing sounds terrifying, and also really fun, but also terrifying. It's like, whoof, whoof, whoof. What was that? That was a fucking tree. So they want to go on the ski trip, but Christina has no clothes. Her mom shows up. They buy her clothes. They talk about the ski trip. Anya's been writing to Blake secretly. And not like long letters like, hi, we're going to go skiing. Love ya. It's like, really? She used to write like long notes with a bunch of words in it. Now it's just like, Dad, we're going here. Bye. And she's hanging out with Jonah at their house, which in the process, they lose Dolly again. I think she just like runs home or something. That happens again later. She goes to Jonah's house, and his mom gives her an outfit to wear, like an actual ski suit instead of like having to ski in jeans and whatnot. But it was like bright yellow, and like, you know, with her hair color, she feels beautiful, and she's like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And then they get to the ski trip, and the girls are kind of rooming together. Anya's still kind of losing it, but then she sees Blake. Is like, "Oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" She's like, "Well, all right, you can't let Blake see you like this. You kind of like make yourself like look a little better, you know, like, you know, sprucing yourself up for your bae, whatever." So she gives her brand new suit. And then they all go out skiing, but Anya's over there hanging out with her boyfriend and kind of slowly regaining a semblance of who she used to be. And Blake, completely forgot to mention, after he almost got killed, they shipped him off to boarding school. So he was like totally dude in the first one, and then like the second one's like, nah, he's gone. Oh, like here he is. He came back, and he basically saves Anya. He says, "Hey, you can stay with me. Don't worry about it. I'll ask my parents. We'll go like night school or something or whatever. And I'll just want to be with you until you get better, essentially." And and then like Anya goes off. She's like, "I'm cold." And Blake returns to Christina, is like, "Hey, you want to like actually go skiing instead of like, you know, this bunny hill or whatever?" So they go like skiing up a gentle deer or whatever. And then there's like running deer, which they were supposed to go on, but it starts to snow a lot harder. And she grabs a hold of the wrong person following them, like, you know, like looking down, trying to follow him. Turns out it's that giggly motherfucker again. And she gets on the ski lift. He goes, "Ha ha ha," kicks up the bar and shoves her off the ledge. So she almost dies. Looking for Dolly again. Well, not looking for Dolly, but like that would have happened to Dolly. But like, I guess they just like the Shevingtons kind of grab whoever they can at sometimes, but like they focus all their attention on one person, and then they kind of spread it out, and then they focus it back in, like kind of like gaining power to like really fuck somebody over. And so she almost dies, and they blame her for it. Like, "Oh well, you know, she almost died going off of like Suicide Mountain. What a shame. All right, let's go back now." Dolly goes missing when they got this big maze out at Jonah's. She actually goes missing, and can't find her. And so she eventually goes back to the house, back to Schooner Inn, goes down into the basement because she has this weird feeling about it. Starts messing around like with the walls, you know, just like, is there something weird? And then like the floor is slanted so like the water can rush back out. And as she's like noticing that, like one of the walls kind of moves. He's like, "Oh," and then she slides down out of that. And then you hear the wetsuit guy giggling, and Dolly's out there just stuck on a ledge. Like, you know, like the water comes and comes, she's going to die. But she's like, "Oh, it was the Shevington's son. He put me here. What's up?" Not really much. I mean, there's fear, but like, she's kind of an idiot. I mean, she's innocent, but she's also kind of stupid for reading as much as she does. But again, 11-year-olds, whatever. It makes sense within the concept of the story. And they hear the giggles getting closer and closer. She's like, "Oh, thank God, like, you know, the sun is showed back up." And Christina's like, "We got to get the hell out of here. That's the dude who pushed me off the ski lift. No." And so they she's dragging Dolly through like the muck, and like as it's about to freeze, and everybody like they could die. And as they're climbing up on the shore, there was the cops and Mr. Shevington walking out. So now he's got to put on this face. But they didn't go look for her. They knew exactly like where she would actually come out. Then they kept to the son, and he's like, "Oh no, he was doing such horrible things. We used to have him over there. And we used to have him like in an asylum over there." But they were like, "We miss him." So we let him live in the basement. and we feed him, and we know everything that's going on, and we told him what to do. But look at him. He's crazy. What were we going to do? Believe this crazy person? She's evil too. Or whatever. But nothing is ever proven. Everything's kind of buried. And the Shevingtons have a scapegoat known as their own fucking son, who they probably drove crazy. And then Dolly just doesn't understand really what's actually happening, and she's just like, oh, but they're so nice. It was the sun. You didn't set your clothes on fire. It was their son. So that's the second book. It's a lot more than that, but trying to make it interesting for myself. It's too bleak, Val whispered. I've always been afraid of the ocean. It's so noisy. It yells at me, calls my name. Val pulled the window shades down and yanked the crimson curtains shut. You shouldn't do that, said Christina. That's evidence. If they look in this guest room, and they will, because they gloat every day, they will see the curtains have been moved. They look in here every day? You put me on purpose in a room the Shevingtons look in every day? Christina twitched the curtains back and yanked the shade up again. Against the aspirin sky, a dark thundercloud began to form. Also, I forgot to add about the whole thing with the sea captain and possibly being a pirate and his wife throwing herself out of a window. The kid breaking his neck down Breakneck Hill. That's why it's called that. Maine's weird, man. And then we move on to the final fire. Or as it is, burning the identity. Other note about like this is the book series. If you ever hear me say it, like I read it backwards. This is the one. I read the last one first, and then I had to go like I found the second one, then I found the first one. But that's because in like school where you got like the carousel of books or whatever. That was just how I found them. I tried to find the other one, like Fog, but somebody else in the class was already reading it. So I wasn't the only one interested by the series. Also online, it seems somewhat popular, but not as popular, obviously, as Face of the Milk Carton, which actually got a TV movie, which I've never seen. It's probably good. Okay, so fire. The tone really changes in this one. And there's this really creepy prologue of somebody lighting like a candle, which from further, like if you read the book before, like, the first two, this was Shevington lighting matches. And then she walks out, and then Christina wakes up, and there's a candle in a coffee tin next to her room. You're like, what? Why is this here? That's weird. All right. So she takes it outside, like, oh, I gotta go to school or whatever. Well, she doesn't go to school that day. She just gets up and like wanders around like the town or whatever. And everybody still treats her weird because like, oh, it's that crazy chick who set all her clothes on fire. So she takes this candle, kind of hides it, and like she doesn't really think about what it is. It says like Christina drops matches, but so that happens. She wanders around the town. You get kind of a catch up on what other things have gone on. What Blake and Jonah and like all the other characters. What has happened between the snow ending and then it's starting to heat up, become more summer. And technically a lot of that really doesn't matter because it's not. It's like just all right. This is catching you up. So she gets to school. Anyway, they had Christina and Benj go out for ice cream, and then the Shevingtons follow them. I don't know why. And then they cut to like them going to school. The school's almost out. They got like 18 more days until like school's actually out. And Benjamin starts to talk a lot. Like he said like 1-2 words tops. He's talking way too fucking much in this one. Like something's weirdly happening. I want to say like the tone changes. You get less of Christina and more of other characters, which is kind of bizarre considering the other two have like, it's just like the writing tone changes, but also she's slowly, without knowing it herself, becoming a shell to where, like, there's Christina. Look at this Fabergé egg. You want to pay thousands of dollars for a fucking empty egg that's covered in random shit we stuck together on it? Not to say anything about like how fabulous those are. Whatever. So school's almost out. He's starting to talking too much. He's thinking about the empty rooms. And then she goes to school and matches fall out of her purse. And I mean like 20 matches, like 20 boxes of matches fall out. And they're like, what? And she's going in her class and she's kind of doodling, not really paying attention. And she's drawing like matches and she's drawing fire. And it's all like subliminal shit that's happening to her. And she doesn't quite understand why or what's happening. But more children start to become berated because the Shevingtons have so little time left to really corrupt and fuck with as many people as they can before they move on to somebody else. Because we still haven't gotten like direct evidence except for one, which I'll get to in a second. But they start planning the school picnic bonfire, which is like the end of the year. Hullabaloo, like that's where there's like the dance is going to happen. There's going to be like a bonfire outside, and they're like, "Oh, Christina, you know a lot about fire," and then she kind of cries and runs away. And also Vic and Gretchen being bitches again. And then it gets to this weird storm cottage thing, which has never been mentioned before. She's like, "Oh, I used to go out to these storm cottages all the time." You're like, I read this whole fucking thing. What are you talking about? And she goes to these storm cottages, which are like, I guess they're kind of out on the outside. I guess it's called storm cottage. It's where they go, the summer cottages, essentially. But it's kind of ramshackle. Some of them don't have electricity. Some of them don't have water. They're just kind of there for like the summer, you know, like camp out and kind of shit. So she kind of like spends some time there. And that's when it comes in that there are binoculars seeing everything that Christina is doing. We never get clarity on who it is in there. I'm assuming it's probably Mr. Shevington. Because he's always the nice, proper dude. He would own binoculars. He's like probably up at the cupola or whatever. And there's more backstory about Robbie, which is not listed because he's just another character. And the only reason he's in that's because his sister, Val, went fucking crazy like Anya. And they actually got Val to go into, which Val, short for Valerie, go into a mental institution where they locked her up. And the Shevingtons show up at least once a week, I think they said, just to stare at this girl and laugh and gloat. It's fucked up. And also, like, one of the guards might be related to the Shevingtons, too. Every time there's, like, a weird, gross creature, like, or I say creature, but it's a person. Like, my brain kind of was like, there's a little Lovecraftian, you know, thing happening there. To where, like, those, maybe they connect, maybe they don't. Maybe they're just, like, weird people. But she goes in by visiting Val as Robbie's cousin. And while they're there, then the Shevingtons show up while they're there, and they're like, "Oh fuck, we got to get the hell out of here." And Val kind of snaps out of it just for a second before the Shevingtons, like, where they're being told like the Shevingtons are there. She kind of snaps out of it. She's like, "I know what they did. I know who, like, what happened to you." And then like Valerie, who was just sitting there, just run. Basically. And Christina starts really losing her sanity. Like more and more of those things kind of like build on each other. She starts thinking more down on herself. She starts doing weird shit like staring at the ocean, and then you get the point of view from like other characters, like her hair became snakes instead of like her thinking about her hair, but she's kind of losing herself in that, and you pull away from it and you're just watching, you know what I'm saying? It's probably a rambly fucking sentence. But one night when she's asleep, Val shows up in her bedroom. Oh, because they make, yeah. they make Christina because they move her from upstairs. They move her into room number 8, Anya's old room, where they keep like part of her soul, or it's a shrine or something. I don't know. But they put her in there because she starts like having these long sleeping spells to where she's just like tired and she just falls asleep. She'll fall asleep in like Mr. Shevington's arms, who she fucking hates. And Val was like in the next room, in her room, but she didn't know it. And then comes in there and is like, hey, I escaped from the asylum. What's up? Like, you know how you say you know how to get back at the Shevingtons. How are we going to do this? But I mean, like, not exactly what it said, but that's the intention. So Christina hides her. At one point, she hides her in room number 7, which is real fucked up. And also hides her in the fucking basement, which we already know that's real fucked up. But there's no giggling man in there. Just water and the ever-present fear of alone, which they both have. They both hate being alone. Not just like alone, but like you're in a sea of people. They're all your friends, but you're still alone. No matter what you do, you are alone. You could never be anything other than alone. And that terrifies them. And then Benjamin and Christina start dating for some reason. She doesn't know why. Like, Benjamin just kind of goes, hey, what's up, girl? How you doing? Like, starts holding the door open for her. And I mean, sure, he's 16 now. She's just turned, I think she just turned 14. I forget when their birthday was. I think she turned 14. And he's dating her. But like Benj, like he works. And so like all the dudes at work are like round a rag. And I'm like, hey man, she's a little young. And I'm like, she's 14. Like he's 16. Technically, there's nothing wrong with that. It's fine. They're just 2 years apart. It's a little weird. Yeah. Anytime people are dating, it's always weird. Regardless. They could be 80 and like 82. It's still fucking weird. Like, why do you like this person? I don't know. I don't know. Science. And then we go back to room number 7, room number 6. And speculating on kind of like who those characters are. We never get around to it, but it says biting Arnold. Basically he tries to hold her back in school one day and she just kind of freaks out. I think it's at school. Either way, he tries to talk and tell her like, oh, we're going to do this to you. And then she bites the shit out of him and runs. And nobody like says anything. Like, it's just kind of like a weird thing. Like, yeah, he's bit. Okay. I don't really remember any fallout from it. Her mom shows up to buy her a dress for the date, which the date is the dance, and the dance is the bonfire. But Christina's still going through that like fear of being alone thing, and it starts to like harp on her, and like she's slowly disappearing, and we're losing Christina. Then you finally get the final conflict. We're literally like she disappeared, like she doesn't go to school. Like she's just like she's asleep or whatever, which might have been a ploy if they would have said it, but they didn't, because it just skips ahead and it skips to like, okay, Christina's is tired because she's been doing it more and more, and so she's asleep. But if she doesn't go to school that day, she doesn't go to the dance and the picnic right afterwards, and it's like, okay. Like, what do you want me to do about it? No, we're just going to change other characters. We're going to go back to what we were doing earlier, and we're just going to see it from other people's perspective, mainly Jonah and other, like Robbie and all that. So they're in class, and then Christina just comes in, basically like, you know, like I like to picture her like just kicking in the fucking door to Miss Shevington's class, dropping down like all the file folders, just be like, oh yeah, I know what you did. Dud? Sure. It starts listing off all these other characters who we've never heard before, like Emily, and I don't know. There's like she lists like all the other girls they met before, who they have like driven out of like other people. Like she got the briefcase and the files and then made copies of it, and then Valerie shows up to like try to like be a distraction, but she screws all that up, and then the Shevingtons take both her and Christina back home, back to the Schooner Inn, and then lock them, like trying to like they lock the front doors, so they lock themselves in and shit. And then they start like laughing and like throwing all their like, well, Christina, you did teach us one thing this year. You taught us not to keep any evidence around. So they start burning all the files and everything. So all of that is erased. And then like the fire gets out of hand because like a draft comes through and it like lights like all the dry fucking curtains on fire. Everything starts going up in flames because it's all made out of fucking kindling. Also, I forgot to mention that she hides Christina hides Valerie at one point in the storm cottage itself. And one time, like Valerie wakes up and it smells like gasoline, and so she books it out of there. But first, she wipes down all the surfaces that Christina touched, including the coffee can. And oh no, is it including the coffee can? Regardless, the only fingerprints that were on the coffee can were Miss Shevington's. So when everything burns down, or everything's on fire, right? So Christina and Val, like they figure the only escape they have is through the cupola, through the roof, which is, remember, third fucking floor. So they climb all the way up there. The Shevingtons are starting to freak out because they can't get out. They can't get the key. They can't, like the door won't unlock. Everything's like collapsing in and all around them, and they jump out of the fucking window, and like they're rescued by the fire department, and fire burns everything to the ground, and she's like, "Oh my god, okay, let's go to the dance." That's how it ends. I mean, the parents show up. They're like, "Oh my god, we had no idea. Here's all this evidence," like at the end of a Murder, She Wrote episode. I was like, oh, well, I always had my suspicions. And it kind of weirdly feels like that, you know, like those ends where it's just like, here's all the proof. Christina slipped inside the inn and ran upstairs, dress box in hand, and up on the cupola for the best view of the boat returning to burning fog. As she rose up the stairs in the old sea captain's house, a sick feeling rose with her, engulfing her like a rising tide. Her mother would never return for her, or if her mother returned, Christina would not know. They were parting, minds and souls, forever. The stairs went on, flight after flight, except for the fact that we don't know who the Shevingtons actually are. Do they have powers? Certain characters say they do if you look into their eyes. Certain characters say that like they've seen them like calling in the fog itself. Some of them like have said different things. And do I think they have powers? It's possible. A lot of weird shit happens, and maybe it's just all like really good gaslighting. Maybe they're just in there going, Christina, you know, and like, but she thinks it's the sea or whatever, or they do. It's honestly just kind of left up to you. Do I like to think that terrible people like that exist? I know they exist. And if they had powers, why would they keep files on things? That doesn't make any sense. But sure, I guess, maybe. You know, they just like keep it like why would you have file folders on all the girls and like how to break them down and then keep a shrine to them? I guess if you're getting away with it for so long, you start keeping barrels and bodies in barrels, you know. That's happened too. So yeah, it ends with the dancing, and both Jonah and Benjamin ask her to dance, and she grabs both of their hands. She's like, "Yeah, dancing seems nice." It might have been like the next day that happened or whatever, but she couldn't go. Like say it was on a Saturday, but you didn't show up on Friday. You can't go to the picnic that you clearly just fucking walked to. I don't know, but that's it. That's Fog, Snow, Fire. It's a a young adult trilogy that I honestly like. I know I've explained it, but this is really well written. This is really good. Like Cooney, you know what you're up to, man. I don't think she's written really anything since 2015, but if I link it below or whatever, I hate this cover, but it's just mainly for like the, you know, look at some of the other stuff. She's really good. I will definitely probably get more of her stuff. I say definitely probably just to give myself wiggle room in case I don't do it. The Face of the Milk Carton. Other short things about Caroline. She's from Connecticut and New York, that area, and she lives in my home state. Possibly still alive. I hope so, because you sound cool. And yeah, that's it. That's the show. That's a breakdown on a book that's really close to my heart, I guess. It's been rent free in here since I was 13. You can nearly triple that at this point. It's good. It's really good. The psychological aspect of it is really compelling. The tension is really good. The end of it, sure, is kind of like that, but it feels very 80s, very 90s, but also still kind of weirdly menacing in the end. It's nicely done. I was very entertained the entire way through. None of, like, all of this that I've written down. Yeah, that's your basic plot points, but even so, there's so much more, and I highly recommend this book. Thank you so much for watching, and maybe there's like a list of names I just made completely up just to screw with you. I don't know. Also, I'm slowing down on certain things. I don't want to put out just bullshit content anymore. It's easy. It's easy just like to hear clip of thing. Yeah. Like I don't really pay attention to it anymore. I do like movies. I do like books, but I need to do more elaborate things in order to keep my attention where it is. Maybe it's this, because I really like breaking down these kind of things. There's a book I'm reading now called We Treat Women Too Well. That's the worst erotic thriller I've ever fucking read. And I haven't read many, but this is bad. I kind of need to explain that one. So maybe that's the next one. I don't know. Maybe it's Cat in the Brain that I finally just got in. Lucio Fulci. It's a gross movie. But this isn't gross. This is just descent into madness and how to gaslight children. 101. We're not going to get into the dark side of this. Please have a wonderful day, and I will see you beautiful motherfuckers in the next one. When is that? Probably on Wednesday, because I like Wednesdays. I'm going to change it to noon. How about that? We're going to put out at noon? All right. Stay safe, guys. Later.